And our third speaker is Mr. Yen Hao of Rising Star Games. Great.
Can you hear me all right? Is this going through? Great. As Andrew says, one from Rising Star Games. The video game industry, and I assume most of you play video games here, the video game industry is in a unique position in that it is one of the youngest, but at the moment fastest growing entertainment industries in the world. The advantages we have is because it's interactive media, we can take potentially any platform to become a video game. My colleagues here from anime, toys, manga, any of that, if it's popular, can be adapted to form a video game. The advantages we have here, and I've got some examples up here in terms of merchandise. Rising Star Games, from its formation, has always been based around Japanese products. We've been around for seven to 8 years now. We're working on our 8th year. We've released close to 100 products within the UK and European territories. Mostly 99% of it focused on Japanese products. And what we've discovered is that no matter how popular a product is, whether it is game related or interactive related at all, can be translated. The products I have listed on here, I mean, you instantly recognise Hello Kitty, possibly one of the most recognised brands in the world, ranging from plushies, handbags, cutlery, anything you can name has Hello Kitty branding. That has translated incredibly well into video games, and it's provided us with one of our best sellers to date. But it isn't just limited to that one product. And what we've discovered is that branding, especially for Japanese products, is incredibly important. Angel Cat Sugar, which was created by the original creator of Hello Kitty, follows on the same lines. It maybe isn't as popular as Hello Kitty is in Europe, but it does follow the same lines. That it started off as picture drawings, has merchandising available, and is now slowly progressed into video games. But it also translates well into film. We released a game a couple of years back based on the movie franchise of Ju-on the Grudge. Those of you, I assume most of you have heard of that particular title. It's a horror game based on, it has an American translation as well. The Americans made a version of it. The video game of that worked incredibly well, and it's not just your usual Xbox 360 PS3 version of the game where you use a control pad. It focused on using a Wii remote and guiding your character along and having things jump at you and scare you. So video games aren't just, they're not limited to just action, killing, slashing, finding things, racing or anything like that. It can be to the developer's imagination. You can really adapt any sort of proposition to any sort of form of video game you play. The only thing that limits you is your technology, and from what we've seen so far, that's changing quite significantly. Can we go to the next slide, please? So branding isn't just the only thing that makes a popular video game. And what we've discovered is there are two other factors, especially related to Japanese products, which really gets a lot of press. The first one is artwork. Now, Japanese artwork is fantastic. We've all seen these painted artwork, the hand-drawn stuff. That translates very well across to video games because of the rich media. It's bright colours, it's vivid. You can really adapt that to nice action games, puzzle games, and it works really well. The example I have here is Muramasa the Demon Blade. Now that's a Wii title we released last year. Again, developed by Vanillaware. The purpose of this game was, it was based very much on providing absolutely gorgeous artwork and then adapting a game around that. If we can go to the next slide, we've got some screenshots for you. So those of you who have played this, it was a side-scrolling action game. So what happened with this game is, rather than the current trend of focusing on solely 3D artwork for video games and going along the ultra-realistic route, this game was incredibly successful and incredibly popular amongst otakus as well, purely because of the artwork it utilised and the way it worked within the game. It was a simple side-scrolling action mechanic. The character moved from left to right, jumped up and down, and you slashed and hacked anything in front of you or behind you. And that was it. The core mechanic of the game focused on simplicity and really drew the person's eye to the artwork. If we go to the next slide, please. Now, the other the other slide I have here is another example of an incredibly popular Japanese game, and really focused on another aspect of Japanese culture which translates very well to Western audiences, and that is the form of story. Now, we're always under the assumption, we always believe that a good game has a good story behind it. You can have a great game with fantastic action combat, but if the story doesn't entice the player doesn't stick. I believe it's the same with anime and with manga as well. The story really drives the interest into the game. And with the example I have here, now this is Deadly Premonition, which was released on the Xbox 360 in Europe. This was released in October last year. And the reason I put this up is because when you look at it, the artwork is pretty dated, we have to admit. The game was developed initially for the PS2, an older generation. The mechanics were highly regarded as being broken. We have to admit that, we're not skating around the issue. But what made this game popular was the story behind it. Now, this game received very mixed reviews, ranging from people who didn't like it and giving it 2 out of 10s, to people who absolutely loved it and gave it 10 out of 10s. And one of the reasons behind that was because rather than concentrate on making a game with gorgeous graphics, spending the vast majority of the budget on making the game work well, what they did was create a believable story and a believable environment for the player to immerse themselves in. And we had a lot of feedback upon release of this game, with people actually praising the game being one of the best experiences they played on the format for quite some time. And it's even surpassed, in terms of ratings and consumer feedback, it even surpassed positive feedback from the more established AAA titles, which had millions of pounds in terms of budget for development. And that's what we're trying to get here. So to create a popular game, a game that works, we believe there's still a market for Japanese games. We've prided ourselves on identifying that market within Europe. There is a market out there, don't get me wrong. There's people may be focusing on Call of Duty and Modern Warfare, Battlefield, these big budget American releases. But there is still a market out there for Japanese games. And what we found is that if you get the right mechanic, if you get the right blend of story, artwork, merchandising, you have those key standout Japanese properties. They actually translate very well, and they do become popular. And I want to touch on one last thing, is that the video game industry at the moment, we have 3 core formats for Nintendo, Microsoft and Sony. But it's not limited to that. Budding developers here, you might take part in noting that, as mentioned, iPhone devices, tablets, your phones, they become incredibly popular. The sell-through rates of those actually vastly outnumber those of normal established consoles. Plus, they are very significantly cheaper to develop than they are for the console counterparts. So if there are any budding developers out there, get yourself onto the iPhone formats, get yourself onto the iPad. If you can get a good game to succeed on there, that is very much your starting block for you to build your next game releases. So, thank you.